Hey, this episode is brought to you by Bob's Containers. Bob's Containers is the leader in shipping container housing, modular solutions, and more. It's a no-brainer with Bob's Containers. Turn your backyard into a profitable machine with a quick Airbnb, a backyard office, or something more. We also make shipping container offices, container restrooms, laboratories, anything you can dream of. We'll containerize a solution for you. So check us out at bobscontainers.com or give us a call, 833-265-3269. Thanks.
This episode is brought to you by Vineyard Sun. Vineyard Sun is a local Austin company that makes quality sunglasses made from sustainable materials. You can see their styles on vineyardsun.com or follow them on Instagram at vineyard_sun.
Welcome back to the Moontower Business Podcast. This is Joseph Obel, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Kevin Killens, who is the CEO of AHvos. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here, Kevin. Excited to kick off and talk about AHvos, but maybe you could just kind of introduce yourself to listeners, talk a little bit about your background leading up to this role.
Perfect. I appreciate it. I have a pretty varied background as it relates to what I've done over my career. I'm not your traditional, 28-year-old in today's marketplace doing technology. I actually started off in the military back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I spent 8 years in the Navy, saw some interesting things to tell the grandkids. And after that, I got out. And from that point on, I was kind of always involved with dabbling in technology in some way, shape, or form. I spent about 22 years in fintech. So most of the career has really been around how do we help, banking customers, banking industry go and, establish their financial goals and revenue targets as it relates anything from the purchasing card industry to online banking, all of those things that are out there. And so, most recently, I was involved in some low code platforms. So quite pretty wide variety until about 7 years ago when we decided to undertake this new thing they called AI.
Excellent. So you were in the U.S. Navy, and you had a pretty interesting role there. How would you describe your experience with the Navy and kind of how that's helped you kind of address this new role and this new venture you're taking on?
Well, that's a great question. I appreciate that, Joseph, because it really does. A lot of people don't understand that when you're in the military, it does alter your personality or alter the way that you operate in a lot of things. And so obviously in the military, execution is a huge aspect of being in the military. Not being able to accomplish the task is just something you don't entertain. So what you do is you wind up getting up in the morning, you do things like make your bed, you do those things because it sets the preparation for the day. And so as a result, it's funny, even as at my age today, I get up in the morning, I make the bed, and my wife doesn't complain. So, but, I make the bed and I get ready for the day and I get started. I also get started early. So it's interesting, the old Army commercial, we do more by 8 a.m. than most people do all day, in the Navy, I did the same thing. What I did was I flew in the back of the Navy's equivalent of the Black Hawk. It was called the Seahawk. And what I did that I was hunting submarines. I was also a door gunner, rescue swimmer, operated, countermeasures equipment. So quite a wide variety of things. So that's very tantamount to putting on the different hats within a startup. So
absolutely,
between the technology of hunting the submarines and the, putting on the multiple hats, et cetera, the discipline that you get as you learn your skills in the military, all of that is what I'll call business, applicable.
Absolutely. That's a really interesting experience you had there. So you're working on AHvos. What inspired you to get involved in this type of work and this company?
Well, there's a number of things. AI has been around for 70, 80 years almost, and it really hasn't changed much. It's really been pretty much based primarily on neural networks. That was the original component. And there's this theory around how the human brain works. And everybody tries to get that jump where someone can see a set of data, not necessarily have a path to the answer, but they jump to that. That's what, as humans, we can do. If I say, tell me what 2 plus, a lot of people know that I'm going to say 2 is 2 plus 2. Well, there's no evidence of that, but in our minds, we can make that jump. Unfortunately, in the neural network model, that jump's not a possible thing. So my partner and I, we started looking for alternate pathways to be able to get there. As we moved, what we found was, because our ultimate goal was the medical solutions. And what we found as we went there is that everybody was trying to boil the ocean. So what we said is, why don't we just address the problems that people have? And so we saw that there were so many problems out there that weren't being addressed. And we were inspired, not only as our goal to get to be able to help solve medical issues, medical problems, but also to be able to help small, medium, and even the enterprise level businesses to do things that are necessary to solve their everyday problems, to help them stay in business, because America is founded on small business. And then in addition to that, to also help them to solve their customers' issues and make their lives easier. And we always say that we're trying to help people we're trying to do for people what they don't want to do.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're at. And we started going down that path, and we came up with some technologies that, in order to do that, we had to do it on smaller platforms. Small businesses and medium-sized businesses, they don't have that ability to pay for those huge data sets. Those conglomerate large language models that use more energy than most cities.
So can you kind of describe the services that AHvos, I guess, has available? I know you have a reseller that sells your product, but can you kind of just talk about the different capabilities that are available through AHvos?
Sure, absolutely. We address the low-hanging fruit right off the bat. We obviously going out and solving, for the most complex problems is in our repertoire, and that's where we're moving toward. But what we figured is how do we solve the problems? So sentiment analysis is a big thing out there on the market. Tell me if my customers are happy with me. Tell me if they're not happy with me. And what that really falls into is something called data classification. Is it A or is it B? Or you actually could say, is it A or is it D? Realizing that B and C are in between. So what we give the customer the ability to do, the business to do, is to know whether or not, it doesn't have to be a sentiment analysis. It could be a data set that they want to know, if does it fall into this category or that category? And we can easily determine that, and as well as the B and the C. And what we do is we look at data, and we actually go and we tell them which categories these fall into. You say, well, why can't they do that? Well, the reason is most of the time we're talking hundreds of thousands of records that they need to classify. If you have people do that, that's really not tenable. So we give them the ability. You give us a small set that you've done, and then we'll go out and we'll actually accomplish your larger task, which is the overall set. And the great part about that is we can even help those people who are out there in the large language model areas, because there are very few sets of data out there that are actually 100% accurate. We can actually tell them where those data sets are inaccurate. And we can say, okay, let us help you clean up your data set. And even that will help the folks using the large language models to be more accurate.
And it's pretty broad. I feel like you can use this in a lot of different ways and process a lot of different data. Who would you say is who's buying the product? Who's the end customer?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, because we have a saying internally to the company, the world is our market. And the reason why we say that is there's really not anything that this can't lend itself to. Like I say, we're just addressing the small, very basic issues right now. We can actually address multiple complex issues, and we can actually do them all together. However, most customers who are going to look at this are customers who have, you can take, for example, we're working and we'll be completing a capability to help support desks. We're working on, so every company typically has a support desk. Some companies may be too small to where they can benefit from this because they don't have enough calls. Well, that's fine. I'm not trying to replace anybody. But there are some companies that there's no way they could fund the number of support agents in order to fulfill all their requests. So we can come in and help those companies at a fraction of the cost of having all of those people on board and be able to solve those issues for them. So Trinsic Technologies is our exclusive reseller right now, and we're very happy to be partnering with them. They're a great company who has a portfolio of small, medium-sized businesses that are able to take advantage of our technologies. We're working with a wide variety of verticals right now. For example, we're working, telephone answering services, a very open category for this. That's one. Medical labs, all of these particular companies that do these things are companies that we can help. The beautiful part about it is that in working with Trinsic and them having the HIPAA certifications and those complete aspect of things, we can move into a technology where we don't have to worry about HIPAA vulnerability because it's all covered. We can cover that with Trinsic. So lots of opportunities in the medical sphere, in the support categories, and in all reality, anybody who deals with data classification at all at this juncture, we could easily support. And then moving into more complex areas, we can do that with them as well. One thing I'd like to
go ahead.
Wait, Jason.
No, I was going to say one interesting use case that I saw on your website is helping political campaigns. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. I always find it interesting when a political campaign puts out a message and it backfires on them. And so, we talked about that internally. And what we have the ability to do is we have the ability when a political campaign actually puts out, whether it be something verbally or whether they put out something that is, because we all know that verbal turns into video, right? And so when verbal turns into video, what happens is people start responding to it. And what we're able to do is we're able to take those responses, immediately tell them, you're getting good responses, bad responses, and that can be tough because sometimes people may rate something and yet in all their supporting dialogue doesn't back it up. So we actually look at the supporting dialogue and say, does it match what they rated it? And tell them, is this a good review or a bad review? And then what we can also do is we can tell them what's trending and in other words, what's being talked about this particular post. What are the key words out there? They can adjust their message if they want to, send it back out. And then what we can do is we can take the responses to the updated message and tell them, was that a good response or was that a bad response? And then it gives people, by the responses that the end users or those who are consuming that political message have, it tells you what are the areas that we maybe misstepped and what are the areas that we did hit spot on. And then they're able to adjust that going forward. So it's especially in this day and age when everything is political, we have the ability to help people out with that, even companies.
That's great. And so what kind of feedback are you getting from users of your product?
The key right now, and we recently launched, so this is a newer product to the edge, but the key right now is people are impressed with the speed. Right now we have the ability to do things in a much faster method than what you'll see with the larger companies out there. Give you an example. Amazon has something called the Corpus, and it is a widely used benchmark to tell people on sentiment analysis, data classification, is it good or is it bad? Amazon, when that particular set is used in their environment, takes about 10 hours to complete all the steps. And we're able to do that in about 1.82 seconds, somewhere around there. So if we do it on a laptop instead of doing it on a large set of GPUs or specialized processors.
Yeah, that's really fast.
It does change the game. We're also able to use that because we can use it on a much smaller hardware set. We can help move it out away from the central hub and put AI in people's hands rather than having to centralize it and just put the input device in their hands.
So, I mean, I read about, you see more and more companies in the AI space doing different things in niche areas, et cetera. what would you say is your competition? And are there any other companies that are kind of doing something similar to what you all are doing specifically?
Well, I would say they aren't doing specifically what we do, and I know that because of how we came to be where we're at. But there are other companies out there who are what I'll call machine learning companies more than they are AI companies. I think AI is a misnomer for a lot of what we see in the market, but they're machine learning where they are just addressing specific issues within the business environment. So there's plenty of those out there. I think where the larger AI market is today is everybody's looking for AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. In other words, I want this device that I can just say whatever I want, and it tells me the answer. The challenge is that you see a lot of people sign up for those things, but very few people use them. And it's because they're not very accurate. We all have heard the term hallucination. They make up things. Right. And so as a result, it causes people to doubt the responses that they're getting. So we obviously will at some point address that because we will do it in a different way and one that we believe will be more beneficial to the end user. But I think the key right now is for us to stay focused on what we call CRI, which is contextually responsive intelligence. And that's giving the customer what they want to know rather than having the customer come to us and searching for what they want to know.
Gotcha. You guys are based in Austin, Texas, right?
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. So you talked earlier about AI being around, I think you said 70 or 80 years, which is I was not aware of. Generally speaking, I guess, I mean, like, where are we on the timeline in terms of the development of AI technology, in your opinion?
Well, it's a very interesting question. And the reason why is because up until the early to mid 70s, there was a huge belief that we could easily create machines or that we could create machines that would become sentient or be able to, have a conscience, if you will, or the ability to think. And what you'll find is that there was also what we call an AI winter that started to take effect in the late 70s, early 80s, up until the 90s. And what that was is we invested a lot of money in that. And it didn't produce what we expected it to produce. And then in the late 90s, as we started to move forward, you started to see people come out of this AI winter and they started to do things that were still in the same model. And the reason why they started back at doing these things were obviously there was renewed interest, but then we had hardware advancements and we had digitization of data. And that was one of the challenges in the early stages is that getting enough data that you could actually put in because not everything was digitized, right? You didn't have the internet. Right. So with the invention of the internet and be able to pour data into these models with the new hardware and, the new processors coming out, it gave people the ability to do that. I think that obviously anytime you have new hardware, that's fantastic, right? I think we just need to be very careful in how we go about this because one of the challenges that you run into, especially in the large language neural network models, is that they don't have the ability to tell you how they got to an answer, which is very scary when you think about it. So if they say, well, we believe the answer is B. Well, why do you believe the answer is B? Well, the model we have produced B. I know, but show me the path that you got there. And it's not there. They don't have the ability to do that. And, they use enormous numbers of parameters, et cetera. And that can be very complicated. What we have done is we've established something called an IRP, which is identified response path. So at any time when we get an answer, we can actually trace that answer back as to where it originated from and how it got to where it's at. So if it's an incorrect answer, and look, all technology is going to come up with incorrect answers from time to time. The key here is that we're able to fix that at that time because we know where it went awry. And most of your neural networks, they don't have that ability. They use weighting measures, et cetera, to try to, to be able to change the answer, but not always does that happen.
Gotcha. So what, can you describe kind of any other future offerings that you're going to have through AHvos? And then is there anything else you'd like to kind of share with listeners about the company and what they should look out for going forward?
No, absolutely. I appreciate that. Like I said, we're starting off with the low hanging fruit. Ultimately, we will come up with an equivalent to an LLM. It will not be a neural network LLM, so it will be different, but we believe it'll be much faster, and we believe it'll also be much more economical. What I mean by that is, if you look at the number of processors it takes to run large language models, it's enormous. I mean, we're talking, there's even talks of just creating power plants just to power AI. So it's very interesting there. What we're looking at is seeing if we can go the opposite direction, see how small we can make our AI footprint. If you think about it, that's green energy positive, right? Right. And if you also look at it, it gives you the ability to put that AI into smaller devices and move that out into the consumer hands rather than actually trying to keep that all in a centralized hub. If you think about keeping it in a centralized hub and the amount of data that has to go back and forth, it's just a massive amount of data going back and forth. We don't keep people's data. We don't do that. So what we do is we educate our engines and we get rid of the data, but the engine still performs when they have questions about their data. So it's really exciting about that. So we'll move into larger, more complex issues over the next 5 years. What we expect is we'll go into the small, medium, and enterprise markets and be able to get out there and to, we'll become better known. And then after that, I think you'll see that there will be a large uptick in some of your larger companies, larger enterprise channels that'll come to us. And the reason why I believe that is because we'll be able to show and prove that we have established ourselves as someone who can provide timely, fast, inexpensive, and accurate answers. And so I think that's going to be kicker to us getting there. But I also will tell you that one of the goals that we have is to be able to provide long-term results for laboratories, pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, clinics, be able to provide assistance in diagnosing, to be able to cures, causes, and to be able to do that at or near cost so that they can pass those savings on to the patient. It's a big driver for us as well.
That's great. You're doing some exciting stuff, and we're excited to kind of follow what you're doing and see how it plays out in the marketplace. And congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far. Where can listeners go to find you online, learn more about you and more about AHvos? Sure,
I appreciate it. We can go to AHvos.com, www.ahvos.com. That's our site there. You can also go to Trinsic Technologies. And Trinsic is, like I say, our reseller. You can find out more of us there, and be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Great. I will put that information in the show notes for listeners to locate. And the final question I have for you is, what's your favorite restaurant in Austin? Well, it's interesting because I come from a small town in Louisiana originally, and been in Texas most of my life, and I would love to say that it's barbecue, but my favorite restaurant is a restaurant called Den Ho, which is a Chinese barbecue restaurant off of the Peyton Gin area off 183. Anytime you go, it's always packed, and it's we know the owner there, family, just a great group of people, and it's a lot of fun to go with a group and to actually enjoy your time there. Love it. I got to check it out. It sounds great. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit about AHvos, and wish you the best, and hopefully we can have you again on the podcast sometime. Joseph, thank you very much. You have a wonderful day. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Vineyard Sun. Vineyard Sun is a local Austin company that makes quality sunglasses made from sustainable materials. You can see their styles on vineyardsun.com or follow them on Instagram at vineyard_sun.